So Nick, thanks again for joining the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Super excited.
So Nick, working with Johnson and Johnson, what would you be doing in order, to increase, I guess, Johnson and Johnson's social presence?
My main goal and in my role was to help our individual clients in my region. So I covered essentially the one-fourth of the entire country, right in the middle, um, to help them grow their LASIK volume. So, as a customer of Johnson and Johnson, we would want them to just, grow their own kind of their business essentially and helping more patients. So I would come in with all my digital background and share with them, hey, here's what I've seen work in the past. Here's what I see is coming in the future. Here's one, two, and three that we can implement, and here's how I can roll my sleeves up to help you. So a really good example, we were talking about this earlier, like back in 2016, when Facebook Live was brand new. So something I've really noticed is anytime Facebook does outbound advertising about a specific feature on their platform, that's what we want to pay attention to and roll out fast because they're going to give algorithm preference to those pieces. So a few years ago, it was Facebook Live. And what was happening is no one were running Facebook Lives, but they wanted more people to do it. So I convinced my doctor in Chicago, Dr. Coleman Kraft. I said, "Hey, I think we should do a live surgery on Facebook." And so, to my knowledge, I think we're one of the first to ever publish any kind of surgery live on Facebook. And he did a LASIK case. I interviewed him afterward. How did it go? It went really great. We did a call to action at the end. And organically, he got 7,700 views of that video.
Wow.
So providing that value to our customers is my primary goal.
Are there dangers of social media as well, for example, in a highly regulated environment like the USA?
Yes, and it's just something you have to be really cautious about. And the thing, so my kids are 5, 3, and 1, so I don't have to have this conversation for a while, I hope. But the conversation needs to be, remember that the internet is permanent, even if you delete something. And so you really need to put it through that filter that, hey, if this were read in a court of law, like, is this okay for me to be posting?
Yeah.
Um, so that's the big thing. At J&J, anytime, we post about something not internally, but something about our products, we have to be really intentional that we're using the hashtag my company so that, people know, hey, I'm talking about the company I work for. And then number two, we have a link to the ISI information. Then that puts us in the clear, so that's just something that, doctors really need to be cognizant of. And of course, I'm not an attorney, so they should always, especially different, geographic regions, they should always kind of bounce it off their attorney to make sure everything's good.
One interesting area that I myself am even a little confused by is, areas like politics or religion. For our industry, even talking about that, it's definitely beyond corporate. Are there certain topics that now you still just got to stay away from?
I go back and forth. I've seen practices that have went to DC and lobbied, for on behalf of, the medical society. And they posted a picture of that and that they're, hey, we're at DC, lobbying today, super excited. And it got negative backlash. And it really didn't say like we're on this side or that side. It didn't at all.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
just said, we're here today, super excited. I talked to that practice and they're like, I will never do that again.
Okay.
And again, that's more patient facing.
Right.
And then I think it also depends on like geography too. So like the Bible Belt, in the South in the US, then, they would post, more, you know, religious type of content. Because that's very accepted there.
Yeah.
Maybe somewhere in the north that would be really, frowned upon. But I think, everyone can, the problem today is social media is just so divisive. and it's so divided on every topic that literally no matter what you say, there's going to be someone in opposition.
Nick, the type of social media on everyone's mind nowadays is digital exhibitions. And yet, they continue to be a challenge in terms of networking. Why is that, would you say?
It's a really good question. And I think it just seems that, as we're hosting, online events, I know Askers was online and had a specific networking piece. There's a sense of a little bit of intrusiveness of, hey, can I reach out to this person? Should I or not? But I think in those certain situations that, hey, the intention here is to network, I think it's absolutely appropriate to reach out to someone. And I think we need to try to make it as close to one-on-one as possible, or as close to in person as possible, because nothing really beats meeting someone in person, shaking a hand, even though we're not allowed to do that anymore. But um, you know, and providing value. That's the big key. It's how do we provide value to someone? So one of my good friends, he's a brilliant networker, and what he does is every time he goes to a big meeting, he asks, a new person that he meets two questions. So if I meet you in person, Matt, I would say, number one, what are some things that you're working on right now that get you really excited, that light you up? And then number two, the second question is, how can I help in that? And everyone's favorite topic is themselves, and most kind of high level people are working on some cool stuff, and maybe you can help, maybe you can't. Maybe the only help is just encouragement and say, hey, that's really cool, or I know this other individual that is in the same, doing something similar, I'll connect you to. So just adding value. So I think when we are in that online space, creating your profile. I remember when the Askers online had their networking piece, most people
Yeah.
didn't even have a profile picture uploaded. So the people that did, that told me, hey, this person is actually open to networking. So I
Mm.
think filling out your profile, so trying to create it as more, in person as we can, really does a big difference in helping with that.
Interesting. Well, where do you see this going in the future? I mean, you're talking about value. I wonder if we're going to go all the way toward almost like a Second Life type platform. But if we did, that makes me think that even though that might be, more of a natural way of interacting in the virtual world, at the same time, I wonder if that means that people are going to have to either be hardcore gamers or it's just not going to work.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I think that this has forced us into creating an experience online. So you're exactly right. A webinar here, a webinar there, that's been done dozens of times. From an education perspective, yes, it meets all of our needs. But I mean, like hopping on a plane, landing, bumping into people at the airport that
Right.
um, dinners and just the networking piece, there's a whole experience to going to a big meeting that is really difficult to replicate from a virtual setting. I think breakout sessions on like Zoom or, like Google Hangouts or whatever the case is definitely helpful. But I think we need to be really, really creative on how do we create that experience that someone said, oh, I actually went to Askers this weekend. And even though I just popped over to my home office from my bedroom.
Well, actually, since you mention it, Zoom and similar channels have gotten the education space right. I mean, Zoom was there just as this was all happening, and the fact that you could, create a video chat like for free within seconds, and then have a bunch of people join. I mean, that's just perfect for for ophthalmic education. It's just the networking aspect in the exhibition hall. That's what still remains to be figured out.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And I think, for me, the ASCRS, the timing, just this last spring was actually pretty tough. I mean, we had so many trainings and so many, just on I was on Zoom from, Monday through Friday. I saw a meme that said the weekends look the same as the weekday, just much less Zoom.
Yeah.
And so by the time the weekend came to join the show, I mean, I'm Zoom fatigue is real. And I was like, yeah, I just really don't want to sit on any more Zoom calls.
Wow.
So, figuring out that aspect too, but then if there's a networking piece, then there's you're more alive because there's actual interaction instead of just death by PowerPoint.
Right. Final question. There are obviously a lot of people in the consumer world who are quite popular. Casey Neistat had been for quite a while on YouTube. Gary V definitely on different platforms. I've seen him a lot on LinkedIn Live as well. Do you think watching those types of people, even though they're in the consumer world, um, could help you in the ophthalmology industry as well in terms of social media?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the real key is, taking those information and then trying to put it through the filter of, well, how would I apply this to what we do?
Yeah.
Because they're doing a lot, like Gary Vee is one in particular that he's usually on that cutting edge of what's coming up,
Yeah.
and so paying attention to what he's saying from that perspective is really good. If you're cool with kind of the Jersey mouth that he has, but other than that, I mean, that content and others as well. Yeah, using that and then filtering that to how can I apply this to ophthalmology? That's going to help you stay ahead above the rest.
Well, Nick, thanks so much for joining us in this chat. It's been really real with all the talk about social media, digital exhibitions, and whatnot. I think you've helped industry, you've helped doctors. Good on you, and thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you for having me.